that thumbnail.
Everybody to Brony Debates Live. I hope you are all doing well out there. We're going to get a good start to the weekend on the first stream of November. Yep. I am looking forward to Thanksgiving. And so we've got a really interesting topic tonight that I know very little about. So I am expecting to do a lot of learning tonight. I hope you will all join me. I see we've got a pretty good viewer count. If you know anybody else that's interested in art-related topics, go ahead and send them this stream. Let's get some more viewers in here and get the conversation going. So tonight, we've got a special guest joining us, Mr. Lee Tockar. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing grand. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you so much for coming on. We've also got Miss Crimson Glow, and if you're at all not familiar with her art, I highly recommend checking that out. Crimson, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, trying to figure out this gain situation.
Your levels are coming in fine as far as I can tell through OBS, so I'm not too worried about it. We've got Cruizer, who helped us set all this up. How are you doing tonight, Cruizer?
Doing good. Just got back from the gym and feeling energized.
Good. Nice. What kinds of workouts you do tonight?
A lot of stuff involving the arms. That's what I seem to be gaining a lot of definition in. A little bit with some of the lower half of my body, as well as some cardio.
Nice.
And then finished with 15 minutes in the sauna. Dear God, and I thought Florida was hot.
Well, keep me posted on your progress, man. I love that kind of stuff. And as usual, we got Mr. Cordero joining us. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, I was doing well. I don't like the way you said "as usual," though.
Well, we haven't seen you as much recently.
Not as much. Yeah, I'm trying to piece together exactly what modern art hot takes I want to have.
Oh, I want.
We could be here all night.
Don't even bother trying to piece them together. I just want you to load them into a slug or a shell like buckshot and just pull that trigger. Okay. So, and what I have to admit, in my shame here, is I did not know as much about Lee's repertoire and filmography as I probably should have when we got.
Well, I'm kind of cutting out.
Yeah, you sound like you were being pulled by the lady in the water, man.
Let's see here.
You okay there, Brony?
We're getting bits. We're getting bits.
Yeah.
Come on, I'm broke. I need more bits.
Come on, bro.
It was all going so well.
That's usually how it goes. As soon as you put a stream on,
all just fell to shit. There you go.
Yep.
If he can't come back for a while and he doesn't kill the stream to restart it, Lee, why don't you start us off? What is the issue with modern art?
I know. I think that we had a different format in mind. I think Justin was
gonna. That's right.
Yeah,
go ahead, Justin.
We needed Cruizer to
Justin, take the reins,
introduce.
Cruiser.
The reason why I don't talk about myself, he doesn't know, because nobody really knows what I do, because I don't talk about myself at all, really. I probably should have all my career, but I don't. I just go and do a job, and then I go home. So.
Yes, for those who don't know, Lee is a big fan of art, of the artistic expression and the craft. He's been involved with it for some time. He has painted. I believe you've also sculpted a few things too, right?
I have, yeah.
And as much as he loves the arts, he does believe that we have crossed the line in some ways, at least with today's modern art. And frankly, I tend to agree. So, Lee, why don't you actually tell us, what is it about today's art world that you really despise?
Well, I mean, it's a very nebulous question, and how people interpret modern art is a very subjective view. It's very individual, and therefore can't really be debated in a classical Cambridge versus Yale versus Harvard type of format. It's a very how people feel kind of a situation, but how I feel about it, for my limited experience, floating around the sun on the rock, is that modern art, or as people interpret modern art to be, is lacking somewhat. And what I mean by that is that they enter into it without the the histrionics, they haven't studied. They
Mm-hmm.
just express. They're all about expression, which is great. I'm all about that. But they have no technique, no skill. They just want to express something. They just want to say something. But there's nothing to back it up. That's we can talk more about that, but I think that's the foundation of my thesis here, is that you have to come from a place of knowledge in order
Mhm.
to reduce yourself back down to that simplistic form of expression, which we find in installation art, like in the Guggenheim, or splatter paint stuff, things like that. I find that it's lazy.
So
And
really quick, I've got a question right off the bat here.
Okay.
Is well for what is the Guggenheim? Because I've never even heard that word before. Literally
It's
just now.
it's a
So
museum of it's a museum of modern art, not the Museum of Modern Art, the MoMA. It's in New York, and
oh, okay.
it's modern and postmodern
Yep.
expressions.
So real quick, if you guys would permit me, I know the stream got a little away from me for a second through technical difficulties, but I'm just going to read off the patrons real quick and give them a thank you before we get much further. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, thank you very
Go for
much.
it.
So, yeah, thank you very much to you guys, and thank you very much to the patrons who support this channel, especially the $10 and up tier. These guys are Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, who's with us tonight, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Zororock 720, Mr. Sonic 31, Ridge the Hedgehog, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse. Check out all their links in the description, as well as the links to our guests tonight, and support their content as well. Now then, where did we leave off?
The Guggenheim.
Guggenheim.
Yes, so tell me about the Guggenheim. So
Why don't we turn it over to our resident art history buff?
So the Guggenheim itself is considered a modern art staple. Basically, it's where you're going to find a lot of your higher end people, where it's like, oh, here's some really abstract, some expressionism that centers mostly around performance art, minimalism, and a few other things. Sometimes they promote some classic artists as well, but that's not nearly as popular nowadays. I think they stopped doing more classical technique artists about the early 2000s.
I think you're about right there. Yeah.
Yeah, right about there. It's like I did link the architecture. It's almost significantly known for its architecture. A lot of it's actually used a lot in movies.
It's a great big spiral.
Yeah, it's like it's a beautiful place structurally and architecturally. However,
architecturally, yeah, absolutely.
yeah. However, most architects hate that place.
Yeah. Well, when I was in New York, one of the couple times I was there, I had slotted the first time I was there. I said, I got to go to the Met, got to go to the MoMA, got to see the Guggenheim. And I had slotted out 2 different occasions where I had to go to the Guggenheim. I went once, and I said, I am never going back there. Never ever again. I've seen what I had to see. In Vancouver, we have Emily Carr, and they have a lot of installation art, and God love the artists that go there. And Emily Carr, I've taken many courses there, but they're varied, right? But installation art and Guggenheim stuff, it's just not my forte, not my field. So but it is that if that's what you want, you're going to get it at Guggenheim. This is what we're talking about, is the modern, postmodern art.
Right. So, we had talked about it a little bit off stream about like the difference between postmodern and modern era. For this particular case, we're kind of lumping the two together.
Yeah. If you want to be more specific, I think it's educationally speaking, it's great for you to teach a little bit of that.
So when people think of modern art, usually speaking, they think about anything past the 80s. Those are usually going to be your what personally I would consider the meme era of art. That's the best way to put it, because Modern art takes place between the years of the 1860s and the 1970s. So that's a really large era, and usually I don't like to just
sort of culminated with Andy Warhol and that ilk, and you know the
Vincent van Gogh, stuff like that.
yeah, even that is very
Mm-hmm.
it's too painterly, I guess, to be considered classical, but I would still consider Van Gogh a little, he's classic. To me, he's
Yeah.
classic. Anyway,
Transitional.
keep going.
No,
Transitional.
no, it's fine. So modern, so when we think of, so that those are the eras. However, usually when people talk about what they don't like about modern art, they're not talking about I don't like the era itself. It's usually like movements, small
Yeah.
movements within that era that happened. So like the cubistic era, the expressionism, impressionism,
Yeah, that's right.
stuff like that.
Dadaism and
Yeah. Currently we are in what is considered the postmodern era, which again I consider the meme era. This is when you get art pieces that center around things like making fun of art, or other people call it anti-art.
You mean like Dada?
Like
a little
what?
bit, yeah.
Like what? I didn't hear what you said, Cruiser.
Dada. It's kind of considered to be anti-art, art that was meant to kind of mock other art.
yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Basically it was a way for, and as we're talking, I'm also putting into the chat for the Discord the different articles that will show up if you look this up, just so that you guys can, we can all like look at it later, or like some confirmation. Maybe I get something wrong because I haven't been at college for a good amount of time.
I'll drop those links in the chat as well as the description if anybody wants to follow along.
So those are all those types of art. And nowadays minimalism in performance art and whatnot, that's usually what's popular right now to do. And that coffee is kicking in. Oh no. That third cup was not a good idea.
But yeah, I think the one thing I tend to see a lot of is people doing a lot of abstract. Now, I remember being a little kid and seeing abstract art for the very first time in an old Nick Jr. Show. And it just seemed like to be like a bunch of shapes that were painted that took up the whole canvas, and they were different colors and obviously different shapes.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's it? That's art? So I went to school the next day during art class and painted an abstract piece and got a lot of praise for it. I'm thinking, really?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
I mean, because for me, when I look at art, now I know I've told this to Lee, and I'll tell everyone else here. Yes, I do come from the world of music, but I do not critique them the same way. There's a big difference. And when it comes to what we'll call traditional art, I expect there to be, what's the word I'm looking for here? Some effort put into it. Like even something as, say, the painting of the Campbell's soup can. I can see that there was a lot of effort and detail went into that. I can look at a picture of, say, a meadow, and I can see there's going to be a lot of detail. But when I see something that's, again, abstract or, quite frankly, what looks like a mess, I don't see how you can call this art. It didn't take any skill to paint what I made.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what I'm on about, is it the lack of skill set that you have to, anybody can call themselves an artist because you have an opinion about something. And like you were talking about, Dadaism, making fun of other art. Anybody can spit. Okay. That it's too easy. But what do you have to back it up? What makes you an artist? Is it just because you have an opinion? I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I'm very opinionated, but on the other hand, I think it was Francis Bacon that did all that of gardening, of expression, of this, of that, and basically the underlying thesis was that only a plumber can critique another plumber. Only an artist can critique another artist. Only a writer should be able to critique another writer. It shouldn't be left open for interpretation because you don't have a knowledge base. You could just say how it makes you feel as an observer or a listener or anything like that, But that does not constitute being an artist, does it? Sorry, not really, not really.
Well, by the same token, because I've heard that before, but let's apply that same sort of philosophy to something else like cooking, right? So do I need to be
like you doing movies? You do movies, right?
I've done a couple.
So if you're a movie maker, it's like somebody that calls himself a movie maker that's just they're just using their, how do you feel about them just using like just throwing people together in a room and using their iPhone? Well, yes, if it's in the execution of the editing and all that stuff, the end result can still look the same, but you don't have the training and the skill behind it. And it's become so easy these days to become a movie maker, to be an artist, to be a something. And it's just, I really just,
I've never understood. Okay, go ahead.
What I was going to say was, I don't know if I'm qualified really, to say what I think about modern art, because I am not in the field of modern art. I can only say what I feel, and it really makes me mad because people don't have the skills. I took years of my life to learn how to, when you're doing, even when I was starting to do animating, like to when I started doing scene stuff, like working at what was I working for? Natterjack Entertainment under Steve Evangelatos, who's now with Wildbrain. And I had a little job there, auditioning to be an artist. And I brought in my portfolio, and they thought it was great. But I mean, I really had never done it before. I just wanted to. And so they showed me a line artist, and you would not believe the skill it took to draw a perfectly straight line. It's impossible. It's nearly impossible. Just like to draw almost a perfect circle. It's near impossible, and it takes a long time of dedication to a craft, with an end result of being the best that you can be in that field. I don't want to be the best modern artist because I don't think it takes much to be a modern artist. Anybody can be a Jackson Bloody Pollock, and that's my guy that I can't stand.
Fun fact, people.
When not going, donate.
Yeah, fun fact, people. When I actually had Lee Tockar on the stream that I do with my other friends, I asked him what was the one artist he couldn't stand, and you could just see he goes, Pollock. I will never forget you doing that.
Veins popping out of my forehead like scanners.
Well, Lee, to your larger point, because you seem to be making a larger point about substance, which I agree with. And Justin was talking earlier about like just not liking art that seems to be a mess. And to connect those two things, I think that what a lot of people, especially lay people or casual or amateur artists, may have a problem with modern and postmodern art is that it looks like there was very little effort put into, and there's nothing that the layperson can connect with. I've always felt, as an amateur artist myself, my background is music. I have a degree in music. As an amateur artist and musician, I've always felt that really, really great art, and a lot of people will disagree with me on this, to be really, really great art, it needs to appeal to both the layperson and the expert. If there's not something for both, you're missing out a little bit on what art really is. Because like a popcorn, summer flick that everybody loves but doesn't have a lot of depth to it is one thing, and then like a super artsy film that most people haven't seen, not because it's not exposed, but because it just gets too deep and artsy for people. Both of those to me are missing something. I feel that art, the layperson needs to look and say, that's good. I can't tell you why it's good, but I like it. And then the expert can go into detail of why it works so well.
I'd like to add to that.
Go ahead, Brony.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that if I can. So something I've never really liked about the idea that only, like you were saying, only a plumber could critique a plumber, is how does that...
said that. Francis Bacon said that.
Right. But anyway, it's the idea that you have to have qualifications in order to critique, and where I always pull that metaphor is I pull it to something else like cooking, and maybe you could even put it to plumbing as well. So the end result, I get the plate in front of me, and it tastes bad. Even if I know nothing about cooking, how much does my subjective opinion or just the fact that it's all you did was put a bunch of sauces together and slap it on some overcooked meat and that I could barely snack on, right? At what point does it become objective, or does it matter? And by the same token, as put it to plumbing, if I call a plumber over to my house and he fixes a pipe and the pipe is still leaking, I'm pretty sure I'm qualified enough to say, hey, you didn't do a good job. The pipe is leaking. If he turns around and says, well, you're not a plumber, I'm going to get a little upset. So how do we reconcile those two things?
Well, I think it's, I don't know. You know what? Again, this is a subjective topic, and I know I'm kind of skirting around the issue here, but we're the base thesis here is I am not a modern artist. And so my opinion of it is going to be very, very, I can't be objective with this because I am very, very opinionated, I get it. It really gets my hackles up because
I think
and if that plumber, if something tastes bad, it tastes bad because the nose never lies. Okay. And if a plumber does a bad job, anybody can, this is something very subjective. You can see it. It's not working. You could say it's leaking. I don't have to be a plumber to know it's not working because it's but I would put it to you that if it's not working, that artist is not an artist. That plumber is not a plumber. If you could see it leaking, if you could see that it's not, then I like the opinion that it should appeal to both, the educated and the masses, right? But if food tastes bad, it. And if a toilet is still leaking, a faucet's still leaking, or a toilet is still running, and there's a big black mold thing on your ceiling because the neighbors upstairs hired a bad plumber, that. You don't have to see the plumber even. You could just see it coming through your ceiling. So everything's subjective.
If I could interject for a moment.
Then me after.
So I think that the idea of, a plumber can only critique another plumber, artist can only critique another artist. I understand the meaning of the phrase. It means that unless you're in that field, likelihood is you're just an armchair expert. And for anybody who doesn't know, that's Nostalgia Critic. I mean, what? The armchair experts are basically anybody who can sit there, look at a screen, and look at a piece and just say, I'm an expert simply because I am looking at this and I am the modern man. That's what it's supposed to be. Exactly. That's what it's supposed to be telling to. Yeah. As artists, you tend to look at something a little differently and kind of say, this is an expression of feelings, or this is an expression of skill. And with modern art specifically, I don't have a problem with the expressionism and the techniques that are being used nowadays, because if I had to be honest, it's just another evolution of what was happening in the modern art era, which is just a bunch of breaking down to shapes and colors and trying to bring us down to this level of basicness or simplicity that we didn't really acknowledge before. What I do have a problem with is with the art industry, in that as long as you have money to put down on something, then you are considered an artist. Like, if you have a name in the game, that is your piece. If you have a sponsor, you have a place in the Guggenheim and a bunch of other places, because you have the money to put yourself through that door.
So here's a question then. So just based on that, because and I totally agree, by the way, and I don't mean to be so agreeable during a debate like this.
How dare you?
I'm not
How dare you agree with me?
By anybody. No, believe me, I'm not a yes man. I will speak my opinion, but I agree with a lot of things that you said. But what about okay, you take a piece of just to divert slightly, okay?
Mhm.
The ultimate form of disgust, other than splatter paint stuff that I have,
Mhm.
is not just the name, because we were talking about Andy Warhol earlier. Well, there's a lot of artists that have a problem with Andy Warhol, not because it's
Yeah.
modern art, but because of the reproduction process, where
Yes.
he silk screened and it was mass reproduction. And that is the problem that a lot of artists have, not in the original. The original
Mhm.
was executed fantastically, but
Mhm.
it's in the reproductive process. That's where a lot of
Yes.
artists have a problem with. So what about just say, what about this? So there's an artist, you see, and he's very, very famous, you see, and he's taken a canvas and he's gone to his local art supply store, hasn't he? Yes. And he's put it up on his easel, yes, because it's so easy to paint. And he's taken his brush, which he's spent so much on, $65 for a sable brush. Oh, he must be an artist. No, artist. And what he does, and he takes that brush, and in a fit of just a white heat of inspiration, he dips the paintbrush, the $65 sable brush, onto the 125 original stretched backerboard canvas, and he paints nothing but white, just white, and calls it art.
Yeah.
So that has been done. So where is the skill? Is it going back to your opinion about, is it just the name? He's just a name. Oh my gosh, he's so avant-garde. You know.
So let me interrupt here for a second.
White on white. It has never been done. My mind is blown.
Let me interrupt for
let Brony speak.
Well, I'm actually trying to turn it over to you, Cruiser, because you had something a minute ago you wanted to say.
Oh well, the one thing we were talking about with plumbers and stuff, I think a regular person can see, yes, the pipe is leaking, but a plumber can tell you why it's leaking.
Yeah.
Just like with art. I mean, you could look at a piece of art and a nobody, say like me, could go, okay, that painting sucks. And then an actual artist can walk and go, now let me tell you why it sucks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I remember my my art teacher, who actually talked about how he hated postmodern art. He hated it. He would go, but he still wanted to be familiar with the techniques that are being used nowadays, some of the familiar local artists. So he went to a gallery, and upon first looking, he looked around and was like, they just put their studio in the gallery. That's all it looked. It looked like they moved all the shit that was in their gallery, or that was in their workplace, and then put it in the gallery, right? So he walked through, he got mad, he was angry, furious. He goes to the very end of the gallery, right? And then he just decides, you know what, let me look at this because it's some bullshit. And he notices that it's not actually stuff from their workshop. What they had done is that they sculpted and painted in pointillism.
Pointillism,
yeah, pointillism on these. I think it was styrofoam. I want to say it was either styrofoam or clay of some kind, and they had painted the whole thing to look like it.
Wow.
And so like he went back all the way in the back and like was looking at it going like, holy shit, there are little things. And it takes skill.
That takes skill. That
is art.
That is art.
But then I talked to a few of my other art teachers, right? And I asked them at one point, what is art? And the dictionary definition of what art is any piece of media, and I might be paraphrasing, so please forgive me, any piece of media or object, something that has been created or otherwise found that initiates an expression of feeling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I believe that is the dictionary definition. However, you ask any of my art teachers, and they will say it is a creation with an explanation.
Okay.
As long as you are able to explain to me why this soda can is painted blue with some sort of phallic symbol on coming out of it,
Oh.
this is art.
I don't like
that's
that. I don't like that, and I have a rant about it.
Cordero, tack it on to the rant for the question that I'm about to ask you, because
Okay.
Lee mentioned the white on white painting, and you, coming from you, the music major, have an equivalent.
You're gonna bring up John Cage, aren't you?
I'm gonna bring up John Cage. Thank you for remembering his name, because I didn't. Tell me about the Silence song.
Oh, John Cage's 436 or 434 or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
It's like 4 minutes and 43 seconds of silence. And the idea is that the art piece or the music comes from the audience reaction. So he says, "Oh, here comes 434. I'm going to play it," and he just sits there at the piano for 4 minutes and 34 seconds, and the uncomfortable coughing, murmuring, rustling of paper, of snacks, and feet shuffling—that's the music, like that. And it's like, it's one of those things. Reaction is like, great. Do you feel smart? Do you feel really artsy for doing that? Does that make you feel special? And yes, this does go to my rant really well. There's this concept that it feels like the emperor has no clothes. Perpetually, the emperor has no clothes, and it's spread throughout the art community. And I can talk about it from the music side. One thing that's very telling, if you go to concert halls where the famous orchestras play, and you look at what's on the repertoire, what these big orchestras are playing, it's always going to be stuff from the Baroque period to the late Romantic, early 20th century pieces. Occasionally, a new piece will come out, like a contemporary written past 1940 piece will come out, but they usually sandwich it between old standards, because the quote new orchestra music doesn't tend to appeal to even audiences who go to the orchestra. We're already talking about usually a higher artistic bar, which sounds really pretentious of me, but just people who go to the orchestra tend to, you know, expect a certain kind of thing, and even those people are not into the modern stuff. In fact, if you ask people to mention a composer past like the 1940s who's really famous, they're all in movies and video games. They're all film score and video games, basically.
I think Gershwin was like the height of that, right? And then after
the
that,
30s, yeah, 30s, and then I was thinking Hindemith, Aaron Copland.
Yep. And then it was a completely different genre, like the big band stuff. Well, that was earlier and transcended through the 30s. Yeah. From the 20s, 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s. And then it became genre, and now it's John Williams. Everything's John Williams, right?
Yeah. The through line of art, like left whatever the muse was during the late Romantic and early 20th century Impressionism period, the muse of music seemed to go away from like traditional orchestra and into movies and films and jazz and big band and other stuff. And the modern orchestra tends to just play the old stuff because that's what people wants to hear. But the new stuff is so bad, and I say bad, you know, acting like I can have an objective opinion. The reason I'm willing to say bad so confidently is that nobody wants to hear quote modern orchestra music. Modern orchestra music is in the movie theater and in your video games, and it's really good, and it still lives. So like the orchestra lives on and will live on as it has been, but the music art community does not recognize it. They look at like the orchestra is the orchestra, and movies and video games and stuff like that, that's like fluff. That's like pop music fluff stuff, and they forget that Beethoven was a pop artist. They forget that all of this music used to be the popular stuff. And basically the emperor has no clothes, because despite everybody having the same opinion of I don't like this and I just want to hear more Beethoven, everybody has to pretend that the modern orchestra pieces that come out are still really good, because if you say it's garbage, well then you're the bad artist.
If I could add to this.
Yes.
So this kind of reminds me about how larger larger movie reward ceremonies, such as the Oscars, the Emmys, whatever. And they're aversion to newer quote unquote trash media. This could be your horrors, your slashers, to the point that the first horror movie at the time to be awarded an Oscar, I forget which one it was, but because they were so embarrassed that they didn't want horror movies to start winning awards, they called it psychological horror, or they called it psychological thriller. Or when Disney won best picture, or was nominated for best picture with Beauty and the Beast, they were like, now we have to make an
animation category.
An animation category, because otherwise how can we have best picture that fits in our very narrow and very traditional outlook as to what a movie is supposed to be, without trying to say, hey, maybe we should change.
Yeah. Well, we're getting that all over the place now, where people are having to pare down because people in general, they want to place up these things around them to say, okay, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. Therefore, anything within the scope and sphere of that wall I've built around me separates me from the rest of the world. Anything inside that wall, that's me.
So really quick here, that kind of sounds like a no true Scotsman fallacy to me.
Well, it's just the way people are kind of isolating things. It's the COVID thing, and it's been happening this is human nature.
Oh, okay.
We tend towards, we have to define ourselves just getting up and leaving our house every day, right? And so us as an individual on the microcosm can be us as a macrocosm in any given field, like art, like movie making, like whatever have you.
So I haven't heard from Cruizer in a little bit, but it looks like he's got some stuff he'd like to add. Tell us your thoughts, sir.
I just think there needs to be a better standard for what we constitute as what's actual art. And the other thing too is what I like to call the interesting effect, where you see these type of people who are online who will say they like something that they know is bad, but they'll say they like it and it makes them seem more interesting, or they'll hate something that's good, thinking it's going to get them interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have to learn to teach people to say, like, no, these guys are quacks. Okay, they just want your clicks, likes, and views. Do not fall for it. So I'm all for like art education, but you're going to do more than teach just the skill. You're going to have to teach, when to spot a faker, someone who's just chasing YouTube clouds. Because I even remember I told this to Lee months ago. I remember when I was a kid. Ripley's Believe It or Not which was hosted by Dean Cain at the time. They had some artist on there, and I use that in very big quotations. And all he did was just douse a house in blue cheese.
Oh yeah, you shouldn't have done that. Yeah. Right.
That's not art. That's a mess.
My first comment was, imagine the vermin. I'm like, the poor neighbors.
I know.
Don't even talk about the vermin. Talk about the smell.
Of the neighbors, right?
Oh God.
We're gonna eat a lot of buffalo wings.
Some people will call it art because it's an oddity. You've never seen something like that before.
No, that's
right. But that still doesn't mean it's art. It's just weird. That's
substance argument.
Does it constitute art, or should it even be in the running to be considered art? Or is it just like, for one thing, it's a waste of good cheese, but
Yeah, it is.
Agreed.
And there's even an incident you brought up with me, Lee, where a lot of these people are more or less trying to sell you a message than they are trying to sell you an actual piece.
Yeah, just like, hey, here's a really cool thought I thought, and so I want everybody in the world to know that I'm a thinker of great thoughts, or I want to be controversial, like you were talking about Dadaism, making fun of other artists for the sake of doing that.
Right.
So I have go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. No, go ahead.
All right. So I have a question here: is how does individual style fit into all of this? So to give some context to that question, there is another one of my artist friends used to complain a lot about people specifically on DeviantArt, and they would put it they would put their art up with the for critique tab, like specifically looking for feedback, and then snap back at any feedback that they would get, often saying, "That's just my style." So,
Yeah, God.
and at a certain point, especially it felt like a crutch. It felt like an excuse, and I could see, like, okay, yeah, but you're given, you've got someone who's arguably more skilled and experienced than you, giving you pointers that you asked for, and you're brushing it off. So how does that fit? How does personal style fit into everything we're talking about here?
So,
well, that's
no, go ahead.
question. That's an interesting question because I'm kind of curious because when I first started to get involved with the Brony fandom because of the roles that I played on the show, and I'd go to these conventions, which were a new experience for me, and I'd go through artist alleys, and I'd see all these artists. I'd seen all these artists, and I made a lot of really fantastic friends among the artists there but at first I was kind of put off by it because they were all doing the same stuff. They're all paying homage to this fandom. So I started to look at it. I had to look at it not like the subject matter, because the subject matter doesn't matter. It's the skill in which they are providing for the end result. Somebody can draw, a beautiful, or can paint a beautiful painting of Fluttershy or whatever have you, and they can do that, and then the vendor next door can do the same subject matter, because there's the main six and all that stuff,
right?
But not do it as well, artistically speaking. And so I had to come to terms with the fact that it's not the subject matter. It's the form that I really like the personality behind the artists, and they all had a form of expression. This was their form of expression. This is because the show brought them all together. And so they endeared themselves to me, and I to them. And then I had to look at it objectively and just say, okay, as an artist, I have to say, are they skilled at what they do? And I want to be supportive, of course, but some are going to be better than others. So let me put it to the panel and to anybody else, like, it's the subject matter. It's going to be the same in the Bronydom, right? The Brony fandom. How do you feel about, people that only do that one style? Because I know artists that have just grown up learning that one style and learning that one subject matter and really not deviating too far away from it because that's what they know.
Right.
That's their definition of art. So
I guess it depends on what they want. Like if they got into art through My Little Pony and started making like the My Little Pony Brony fandom style of art, and they love doing that, maybe they made a little bit of money, maybe not, maybe got a little bit of attention, and they're happy with that. I mean, God bless them. But if they're aspiring to be like have a larger artistic spread, they probably have to expand beyond at some point if they want to grow more. But if somebody's happy in that little box, this is my hobby, this is the art I do, this is my audience, good for them.
Yeah, you just can't get mad if you don't go other places.
Yeah,
exactly.
So
why isn't it growing? Because you're not growing.
So, speaking from the business side of things, yay, I get to use my degrees. So speaking from speaking from a business side, I do totally agree that sometimes it's about hey, this is my box, this is my hobby, this is how I make a little extra money on the side. The thing about that though is that when I was still drawing in the My Little Pony style, and I was not good. I'm gonna say it right now. I was not good. Okay. It was clunky. The anatomy was off. The muzzles were always weird. But I then learned and progressed past that. I still draw a little pony art every once in a while. It's still not good. But it's my personal style, in certain ways. Like maybe the eyes are a little weird. Maybe my muzzles lean a little more towards Gen 3.5 or 3. The parts that nobody likes. But that's where my money was being made. I got money through the My Little Pony fandom, and then as soon as I moved past that, I lost a lot of my audience. And I think that's what a lot of people fear when you're going into the My Little Pony art community and trying to make this a business, which is very rare. Lightning Bliss, Keyframe, all the artists that you would know, especially for the My Little Pony stuff. I'm only listing those two, even though Keyframe, I believe, has moved past My Little Pony into other things. And but it is, at this point, it is a small community, and unless you want to stay in the Brony fandom as a artist, you have to evolve with the new styles. Right? And that's really scary for some people. I know a lot of artists that still vector using Gen 4, and they are talented artists in other ways, right? So staying in your little box, it's nice. And if you can make your money through that area, that's great. But as far as like when you're asking for critiques, like you said earlier, Brony, about, hey, this is my art, here's the tag, looking for critiques. As an artist, I know that it is so hard to take a critique because it feels like a personal attack.
Oh yeah,
and
let me tell
who
you,
uses that tag knows that.
Let me tell you. Yeah, let me tell you a personal story there, because we all know that I make the videos and I do analysis. And one of my series is analyzing like the friendship lessons of Friendship is Magic and seeing how they stack up in real life. Well, I've got kind of a especially like earlier on when I just didn't have the same energy levels as I do now. I came across very monotone, especially if it was a serious topic in the lesson. I'm dour, I'm serious, I want you to be using your brain. So I did that for a very long time. But I put a lot of effort into those scripts. And nobody ever really said anything to me. And then one day we were hanging out with a bunch of the other content creators, and I casually mentioned, I wish my serious analysis series got as much attention as my comedy reaction series, because I put a lot more effort into those scripts. And I got called out by one of these guys, and he made a whole video on me like, and took what I said completely out of context. And then I went in the comments. I said, I didn't actually say that though. And then somebody else made a critique video, said, okay, since that wasn't what he said, I want to talk. And he critiqued me, and he came back and he said, listen, you are monotone. Your voice puts me to sleep. And I said, and I was like, okay. That's the first bit of real critique I've gotten in my, at the time, 6 years on YouTube. Thank you. And now when I read moral of the story scripts, there's ups and downs in my voices. There's, I speak way more passionately. I mean, nobody can see it because I use the pony avatar in the videos, but I'm in the recording booth. I'm in the recording booth shaking my fists and like chopping my hand and just being as Italian as I possibly can.
Being as Italian.
and it helps a lot. So, you've got to, if you're out there and you want to improve, do not fall into the Dunning-Kruger effect where you think you're good. Don't ever think you're good, because that's when you start sucking.
With that being said, though, sorry, did somebody else want to speak?
No, continue. I'm sorry, I mumbled something I should.
Oh, okay, sorry. So The problem though with that is that we are very reactionary people. We try very hard to be very like forethought, going like, hey, logically, I would not say, I don't know, throw this water at my computer. You can't see it, audience. I am holding a glass of water in front of my camera. Nobody can see
Here
this.
she is.
Yes. Logically, I wouldn't do that because I'm in a place of total logicalness, I guess. But
well, you were until you said logicalness, but go ahead.
But I get angry, but then there's a personal attack. Nobody thinks with their forethought brain. They think, oh, you're attacking me. When we're talking about art specifically, right? Critique is something different because that is absolutely an objective and a style in which you can say, hey, your technique is off. See, not your opinions.
That is where I was talking about Francis Bacon, because the actual piece that I was drawing information from was on his papers of criticism. So when you are actually calling yourself a critic of a particular thing, it wasn't to be a thing, it wasn't to be that occupation, it was who is allowed to be a critic. And if you're calling yourself a critic, those are the only people in that field that can actually have an opinion about that person's style and technique. And we're not talking about feelings. You can't look at a broken toilet and say, I feel like it's still pooling urine on my floor. It's
right.
Yeah.
But anyway. But in a critic sense, critiques on, say, being a critic actually does require, especially on YouTube, does require a different set of skills and a different format in which you need to have a certain voice, especially internet critics. A lot of them lean toward, ever since Nostalgia Critic became popular, there was a good amount of time where it was just all, this is Nostalgia Critic for music, this is Nostalgia Critic for I don't know,
rapping.
This is a Nostalgia Critic for Twitter. And it was just that, and it was very monotone. It was very, but now that we've moved past that and that stuff has kind of lost a lot of favor, you have to actually lean into different techniques in order to make yourself better. Now, how does this relate to modern art? Because it feels like we've kind of leaned away from that.
Okay, that's what debates do.
Right, it leads you from
discussion.
Yeah, it's a big discussion. With art, on the other hand, art is about expression. It does have some technique in it. However, the problem with that is that art tends to have a feeling rather than be dependent solely on your technique, or being solely dependent on what materials you have. Because I have seen people just make art out of things that they found in garbage cans. It's weird, but somehow it works.
Found art it's a thing. It's thing.
It's
what you do. Absolutely. Just to get back to what we were all talking about, and I thank you for bringing us back to that. We're talking about modern art is we were talking about, and there's a meme going on, and I tried to ask a couple of people about who was the artist that did it, and it was the half-drawn horse meme, and this was the basis and foundation of my whole rant was because what it was, really, and people have seen this, it is on the left side of the page is a simplistic drawn horse. It's like box with lines. It's like a stick person, but a horse. The front half of it, and the second half of it is a very elaborate sketch drawing with an anatomical, it's the musculature is perfect, the skeletal system, it's all intact, and it's the shading is wonderful, the lighting, everything's beautiful. And what it was meant, this is an award-winning artist, but the name escapes me. But anyway, it was meant to promote an art school, saying that we can make you and your simple drawing look like this when we're done with you, molding you into an actual artist. And what somebody decided to do in their grandiose thoughts was flip it. So the back end of the horse is on the left hand, and it's really done very, very well. And then it comes into a stick person drawing of a horse. And the meme was something to the effect of when my client tells me they've run out of money for the budget, or something like that.
I've seen that. I love that meme.
Yeah, I love that meme.
I just
And
shared
so-
the meme.
And so, thank you. Yeah, because that's really what it is. I don't think that a person, this again, subjectively speaking, you really need to learn how to do a technique in order to claw it back. Like Picasso was, he was transformative, but he was also a very skilled artist to get back to that simplistic naivete art, which was Cubism and all of that. You really need, I think personally, again, just me, that's just me, not anyone else, not anyone's opinion, just myself, little old me, is that I think you need to know a thing in order to throw your head away. Know the skills, know the rules, know how to draw, and then pare it back so that you actually know what you're doing, so that then there is some relevancy to it. Then there's something I can say, this looks simplistic, but I've seen this person's other work, and this is getting down to basics here.
So
Right.
I got a couple of questions I would like to ask us for the topic here.
Okay, before you do that,
yeah.
though, I just want to add something to what they were just talking about.
Please
here.
do.
Okay. The one, well, I may not be an artist. There is one artist I have listened to, and he made this pretty clear. It was Danny Antonucci, the creator of Ed, Ed, and Eddie, who said,
I know him very well.
He said, he said, F digital and draw. Put down the tablet.
Yeah.
And he said, learn about the bite of paper. Learn about different types of lead. Learn what the bristles of a brush can do for your outlines.
Yeah.
This is what goes into creating art. It's not, some computer tablet. Okay, this may be convenient, but you have no personality with this.
Yes.
Well, I don't know. It's true, but the last couple of things that I put onto my Facebook thing, my fiance, she's sitting next to me here, Carly, she showed me how to install this paint program, and instead of using a stylus, because I didn't have one, I did all of it with finger painting. So I brought it down to I still managed to bring it down to like a tactile kind of experience.
I definitely agree with that mentality. I originally, as an artist, before I started doing digital, because digital was a huge jump for me. It went from me learning the techniques I had to deal with paper and pen, and like, oh, this is a 2B, oh, this is a 6B, oh, I need an H, or like, hey, I need a soft charcoal, and going from, okay, why is this not working the same way? The reason why is because when you're touching paper and you're feeling a pencil, it's the raw technique of using your hands.
It's a tactile.
Yeah, it's tactile. And being able to say, this is how we look at the world. Art classes, I want to talk about this real quick. Art classes are meant to teach you what is. Experience takes you to what you are.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the question I wanted to ask is that when it comes to the modern art community, and by modern art community, I mean the art community in the present day. So in the art community of the present day, how good are people at critiquing each other, or do they all just throw all objectivity to the wind because that's the style or that's the expression? Like how much of the emperor has no clothes is in the modern art community?
It's in the money and it's in the name.
Yeah, I think it's a really nebulous individual snowflake kind of question. I mean, I mean, how long is a string?
Oh,
There
God.
is no answer. There is no answer. It's
I got a measuring tape.
Well, okay, let me ask this question. Let me ask this question then. In your experiences, Lee and Crimson, how much of that type of thing have you seen?
So my experience is mostly in schooling. So a lot of it will be a lot of art critique. I did go to several local artists. That was part of my education, to go to local artists and be like, hey, what's up with the modern art world? And for the most part, and keep in mind, this is local, this is not international. Internationally is a different type of community than any local gallery is going to show. So as far as local galleries are going to show, usually speaking, a lot of my experience has been around water, oceans, and sand, and a lot of metals. And that's because I live in a coastal city in California, where it's beaches and sand and ocean. If I went to, say, the galleries down in Balboa Park, let's say, a lot of those are going to center around historical material. The modern art world is very commercial. It's centered, again, like I said, it's centered around money, it's centered around names. If you can get a name, if you can get the money, you are in the game. I think a lot of the critique that comes from that is the same type of critique you're going to find on an Instagram post, on a tweet, where it's like, it doesn't have it. And I hear that a lot when it comes to people critiquing my art, critiquing other people's art. It doesn't have it. What is it? It's just the way it's missing the way it should make you feel.
Yeah, you really got to learn how to have what some people call a good bullshit detector.
Yeah.
Yeah, like kind of like the whole thing about self-critique and style. You got to learn when, one, maybe it really is you. Two, maybe the person is just being an asshole. And three, knowing when to walk away.
Yeah.
By the way,
Go ahead.
sorry. By the way, the non sequitur, the author or the artist of the half-drawn horse is Ali Bhatti.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Because that's honestly the thing here. There's no way to, at the present time, there's no way to actually go into someone's head and determine their thoughts, and when they can't went to making a piece here. You really have to learn to educate yourself when you see something that's bad or see something that didn't take much effort at all, to know, okay, this is nothing. Or when someone, again, is just selling you a message. That is something I think the art community, or at least art schools, need to start doing. You need to start teaching people how to detect bad art when people are just trying to sell you a mess or barf art.
Can we coin that? Can we trademark that?
Yeah, you said that to me a couple weeks ago, and I said you got to make a T-shirt out of that.
Yes.
Like barf art.
Yeah.
It's like the Nickelodeon logo, or like the Nick Splat logo, but it's like barf.
I'll bet you that logo from way back then, that took some effort to make, and it probably went through several layers of marketing department before they finally settled on it.
It definitely did.
Yeah.
It definitely did.
Lee, what do you think about the question?
Rephrase?
So how often do you run into, like, how honest is the critique of each other within the art community of the present day, or is it or is it a lot of like pretentious, agreeing with each other for the sake of it?
I really don't know that I'm the best qualified person to ask for this because A, I'm a reclusive person. B, I know a lot of artists, and I know their histrionics, and you know, they know if I like them or not, and they know I know if they like my stuff or not. But we remain friends anyway because well, yeah, we've known each other for years. But I don't I do go to galleries, but it's a very individual type of experiential thing for me. So I don't go to a lot of gallery openings anymore like I used to. I used to go to a lot of them, and everybody's got an opinion, and everybody wants to think that their opinion is the most important, you know? So everybody's got an opinion, whether they're an artist or not. So I stopped a long time ago trying to, it's like, you know, debating with somebody who's going through a phase in art is like talking to somebody about philosophy. Where do we come from? The origins of the universe. You're gonna, you know, it's all very subjective. The Scientologists are gonna tell you it's this, and you know, the Darwinists are going to tell you this, creationists are going to tell you something else. I mean, it's really, I don't know. So I am not the best qualified person to ask, but in my experience from what I have had before, everybody has an opinion. Whether they're entitled to it, not my opinion.
So
everyone has an asshole.
in that case, we'll move on.
I just know my opinion is, you know, not popular among other artists, because other artists that do that kind of art, I like them as people, but I don't like the style of art that they make. So I just clam up around them and I go, oh, I see you finished another one. That is great. You did that.
You did a thing.
I think okay. So I think what I was trying to do was get a sense of our opinions and experiences with you know, let's say you go to an art gallery, what's the percentage of or ratio of people just kissing each other's butts and smelling each other's farts versus trying to tear each other down? I guess that was the ultimate question there.
Again, it's one of those things where it's all about the money and the name.
My next so I got a few questions here before we get into audience participation. My next one, I'll preface with, you know, I listened out of curiosity to a YouTube video years ago that it was titled "Why Your Art Teacher Hates Anime," and and the crux of the video. So you can correct me if I misremember something here. Then, basically, that their point was her point boiled down to when you're in art school, you're supposed to be learning the style of the moment, which could have something to do with sculpture, or it could have something to do with a certain style or certain period that you're trying to replicate for the purpose of learning the technique, the physical technique like you guys were talking about earlier. And anime is just, if I say anime, you already know. Okay, you already know what it looks like. Okay, the giant monkey with fetal alcohol syndrome face. Okay.
Wow, that's quite a summation of
that is a description that I will use.
With very few exceptions, we know what anime looks like. So and what your teacher is trying to do is get you to be versatile, so you don't get locked into this one style that looks like literally everything else that's coming out of Asia right now. So the question to that is how important is diversity when you are trying to actually become an artist, as we're trying to define an artist? Like, do you need to be able to work in all of these different styles or work in all of these different mediums?
I think it behooves an artist who wants to
Mhm.
call themselves an artist to want to advance beyond a certain box and want to develop certain other styles. Stylistically, I think it's important to have that in your tool chest anyway as an artist.
Mhm.
You know, it's like I was talking about with Picasso being a technical artist and then moving backwards into cubism. You can't
Mhm.
start with cubism and stay with cubism and say you're an artist unless you become, like you were saying, a name with money and a
Mhm.
backer, and you've got a patron and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But I think it behooves anybody that wants to become an artist to want to advance themselves, to increase their skill set. That's
Mhm.
just my opinion again, and all of this is very subjective, but
Mhm.
you know, I, I know it's just my opinion, but I
Mhm.
don't think I'm wrong. So
I don't think you're wrong either. I think I do, for me specifically, and uh this is coming from somebody who has several different friends in the art community as well. It depends on what job that you want. Personally, in my view, I think you should absolutely expand your horizons, test out different styles,
sure.
whether like for example, I went to England, I literally got watercolor pencils because I never tried it before.
Mhm.
But as far as like, if you're trying to be an independent artist, you can either try to get every style you can, or you can specialize, and that there's no shame in specialization,
Not at all. No.
especially if you're especially if that's where you make your money. However, if you're trying to be a industrial artist, and what I mean by that is an animator, a concept artist, a something that works in the industry, then you can't really have your own
No.
style specifically. You have
No, you
to, yeah, you have to be flexible. You have to move around, and um and you do have to go to school for that. Sometimes you're able to work in an animation studio while you're at school. I've seen many
yeah.
people do that,
Yeah,
but you,
internships, yeah.
yeah, some people actually have gotten jobs instead of
Yeah.
internships.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's and it behooves you to have a style, because it does, especially in animation, it really hurts the product if it doesn't look the same. Now, to be fair, you can actually tell who works on who depending on the style of animation or the way that you draw something. I think one of the popular ones right now to talk about is the Chipmunk movie from several years ago. From like, what was it, the 90s, the 80s?
Shoot, I don't
Um
know.
The live
the
action Alvin and the Chipmunk
Yeah, that was
series?
the first
No,
place mine went to when you said a few
no, how
years ago.
dare you?
Oh,
How
you mean the
dare
original? You
you?
mean the animated movie that was from the animated series?
Is the
I'm talking
Are you
about
talking about Chippendale? The
Rescue
Chippendale?
Rant. No, I'm talking about Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Where they
Okay.
went like racing around the world collecting dolls.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that
You
one.
right now, and I believe the artist is uh, uh Tunerific or something like that. I forget what his username is, but he recently talked about it, and and you can actually, and he pointed out that if you look really closely, you can actually see the different ways an animator will animate something versus somebody else. Another really big example is a animator from from Castlevania. Everybody knows those fight scenes. They're amazing. But he also worked on Owl House, and you can actually see his same animation style in that fight scene between Ida and her sister. So yeah, if you're working for an industry, no, you can't have a style. You have to be flexible. If you're working independent as a commission artist or something, absolutely, you don't need
Yeah.
to special. You don't need to be flexible, but you should expand.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I agree. I agree with you in general. Because I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, at least in your technique, like
Yes.
learning better shading, learning better form and structure, same subject matter maybe, but but just a better way of expressing it and
Yeah.
a more classically trained way of doing it. And twice I've heard people use the word hobby artist on this program so far tonight. And I guess there has to be a distinction between hobby artist, commission artist, artist, and it's like the difference between art and high art. I don't know, that's a very nebulous thing. All of it's very nebulous. And you can't call yourself a voice actor unless you've been paid. You can't call yourself
Right.
That's well, this is the baseline here, right? Where we're talking about industry. Like you can't be they say you can't be a writer until you've been paid to be a writer. You can't be an artist unless you've been paid for your work. You can't be whatever unless you've been paid for it. A comedian, unless you've done a weekend gig and a paid weekend gig, then you can call yourself a comedian. But it's I don't know, man. It's a touchy subject. It's it's all very nebulous, very subjective.
So
and plus, there's also the fact that there are lots of talented artists out there who never get discovered, and not even just with traditional art. Anything from performing to writing music. There's lots of people out there who will never get their the appreciation they deserve.
That's true.
And it's also one of the reasons why I think it might be time to possibly start whole new institutions where, say, like for example, we'll take we'll take for example for like some other random art critic people who has this huge following of fans who listen to their blog, and just start a whole new blog that says we're sick and tired of the shock. We're sick and tired of seeing the talent less. We want to focus on the talented and try to just work people over. And it's not going to be an overnight thing, but these things are not going to happen overnight. Even people who just suddenly go viral get lucky.
Yeah.
This is just something you're going to put a lot of work into, and it could damn well take 10 years, but it will be worth it in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, valid points for sure.
I mean, matter of fact, I saw one video of just an art museum, and one guy is looking at just a pair of glasses, and he's kind of looking rather intrigued by it. He starts getting this crowd of people, and what does he do? He puts his glasses back on and goes out the door. These people just want to feel pretentious, and they go, guys, you are not in this for the right reason.
Exactly. Yeah, you make a valid point. There are people that are artists and people that want to be known to be an artist. It's like my least favorite trait of people that I have met in my life are disingenuous people who say that they care about you, for example, or if you're suffering, they will be there for you, but they can't do it unless everybody knows that they're doing it for you. They have to. Does everybody see how much I care for this person? Is everybody watching? Is this my good side? Or it's like the same thing with artists. Can everybody see me doing art? Does it?
Remember,
this harkens back to a very age-old question: for whom does one make art? Do you make art for yourself or for your audience? Now, this is a very classic question, and it's one that's been a conundrum for artists. Even myself, who fancies himself an artist, but I mean, only the market will bear, right? Only the market will tell. To me, I'm an artist because I love it, but the market will bear it. But it's very subjective. Do you want to be an artist, or do you want to be seen as being an artist?
Right.
And do you paint because you need an audience, or do you paint because you can't help but express yourself?
Yeah.
So it's integrity. It's artistic integrity has to be intact. Otherwise, if you don't have integrity, I don't care what field you're in, you are not that particular thing in that particular field.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Brony.
Sorry.
I was going to move that into my next question here is so why is modern art bad, and if so, why? Because we're dealing with something very subjective here, and Lee, you seem to really not like it, but if you're not a modern artist and you can't critique it, then what's the damage? And
Integrity, lack of integrity.
right.
That's I summed it all up just with my last statement. It's just if you don't have integrity, you're not. If art without integrity is like media without message. It's mental masturbation. It's bullshit.
So I have an answer to this question myself that I'd like to pose, and then see what other people say. So, what are my art forms? I do video editing, I do photography, and I practiced. Well, I've dabbled. Is more the correct word for it, but I've dabbled in almost every type of combat sport as well. So, and there was a period in my life I took it very seriously. So, when it comes to art, I do believe that there is practical function to anything any art that you're producing, and especially if you take that and apply it to the martial arts. That was the science of hurting people. Okay, and when we turn it into a sport, it's basically super sophisticated tag, which is. There's nothing wrong with that. I greatly admire the sport, and it becomes who can get more tags within a certain period of time, right? Which is perfectly fine. I prefer that. But if you apply the modern art sort of thing that we're doing to the martial arts, then what you're doing is you're getting people that you're taking things that's supposed to give you a lot of really good life skills, such as fitness, discipline, reaction time, flexibility to avoid injury, and you're propping up these egos, but you're taking away the function of what it's supposed to do for you. And even if you never get into the ring, and even if you never have to take a gun away from somebody, you throw these bad punches on the punching bag, and you don't really break a sweat. You're not getting the reflexes out of it that you can use elsewhere in life. You're not getting the fitness out of it that you can use elsewhere in life. And that is what I believe is the damage to society that bad art can give, and it's the normalization of low effort. And you could say the same thing like for the wide effect that TikTok has been having on the art of video production. And I will say that some people have learned the format of TikTok and made some very entertaining and even very good movies out of it, even if they're just filming it themselves. That talent, they made it work. But by and large, you are looking for somebody's gold filling on a tooth in an absolute dumpster, in a complete landfill for the average that's out there. People don't.
I really liked what you said there. That was a very good coin phrase. It's the normalization of minimal effort. I really like that.
Yeah, and as someone that I don't consider myself talented in everything. I have worked my butt off my whole life to be average on my best days. So I certainly do not appreciate the middle. And I see it elsewhere because now everybody wants to be an influencer and everybody wants to be the TikTok star because they don't have to do anything but take a picture on their phone, and then they get $1 million. And and I'm struggling to pay the bills here, and I actually kind of know what I'm doing. So I guess there is an element of jealousy to that as well, if I'm being totally honest with myself. But I still think it sucks. So
It does suck.
that is my answer to
martial arts without integrity is the McDojo problem.
Yeah,
like the watering down of martial arts in the U.S. largely.
Okay, so let me tell you another personal story, guys. When I was training, right, like right around the time I got my first degree in Ishinru, and there was my school, the where I was learning, the teacher was a former Marine drill instructor. He got his first degree in 2 years, back when it took 10 years to get your first degree. Like, the dude is insane. When I learned under him, I did nothing but throw straight punches and step forward and backward, because there's a very specific way you have to do that for like a month. And then when I was good at that, then he could do the rest of it, right? And there was another Ishinru school down the street. And one day, one of the students, when I was teaching, one of the students came in from there, and he literally didn't know anything. Like I've taught Cordero a little bit of what I know. And Cordero, what was the first thing I told you about the formation of the fist?
I forget. I failed you.
Oh, point is, it's vertical. That's literally the first thing. You hold it upright. This kid didn't know that.
Yeah.
He had the
the position of your fist when you're in position.
He didn't, and he had the strangest belt, and it was like, oh my god, how? It was insulting. So anyway, that's my answer to that question. I wanted to hear what you guys think of it.
Yeah, it makes sense. You experienced martial arts without integrity, and a TikTok is sort of what could be a new, place or platform for art. There's also a lot of art without integrity there, but there's still people making good stuff out there. I think that the people who making art with integrity will eventually win. I think it's a confusing, modern, contemporary period of people discovering new ways to make art via technology and sharing it on the internet. But I think that the people making art with integrity will win in the end, because it's just so compelling. When somebody makes something great and it's easy to recognize it's great, whether you're an expert or not, it's gonna sell and it's gonna be big.
Yeah, well, I hope you're right.
So I wanted to address this mostly because it showed up. I was looking at the chat, and I wanted to clear this up when I was talking about how you don't necessarily need. Actually, hold on.
No, I wasn't. That was sorry. You can't see who I'm pointing at. I wasn't pointing. I was like, keep talking. Keep talking.
Okay. Sorry.
Sorry. That was for Justin.
Okay.
So Justin.
So
I'm listening with I'm listening to everything you're saying. I love it.
I wanted to address this when I was talking about how you don't technically need to know everything about like certain styles, because we were talking about styles earlier. Harryman had said Crimson, even if you have a style, it's worth the effort to learn new techniques and other styles so that you don't suffer artistic stagnation. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that you shouldn't or that you can't. I'm saying that you don't have to. But I did say to expand your style, not necessarily to stay in a stagnated version of suckitude.
Nicely said.
Yeah, otherwise you'll end up like AC/DC, putting out the same album every time.
Yes. Next time they'll be doing it Back in Black in dubstep.
I got one more question.
I would totally pay for that. I would.
At least it's a twist, at least it's a remix. Anyway, I got one more question I want to ask before we get into audience participation here. I'm gonna be a little bit vague, and hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about. What do you guys think of the bean in Chicago? The Chicago bean.
I would like to flick it.
Does everybody know about the Chicago bean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what that is.
Statue of a bean is like a big metal casting of a bean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
The-
so that's well, that's I don't know. There's one in every city. There's the loony, the huge loony that's in one of these. Which city is
Mhm.
that? They have and they have the nickel. They have the huge nickel, and they have the in Vlegerville, Alberta. They have the world's largest Easter egg. It's just a representation. It's I mean it's is it art? Is it art? Maybe
So-
in the
The
construction.
biggest ball of twine in Minnesota.
Right. The story there is that the bean was made by the guy that's like the epitome of every bad modern art stereotype that we've talked about tonight, and people generally hate it, but it's a tourist attraction, and they obviously paid millions for it, and the guy who made it thinks he's the best artist that ever lived. So how does bad art like that keep getting so much money?
I
and
don't think the
exposure?
bean is bad. I don't think the bean is bad. It's really big and you can walk inside it. Like you can walk in the bean. Like it's like a whole
You
like
can walk in the bean?
Walk
yeah,
in the
you can
bean?
you can
Oh,
go
you can
inside
walk
the
in
bean.
I can't
only-
just flick it?
I only know this is because I'm an esports nerd and
Oh.
I watch Cloud9 in Chicago visiting the bean. And I saw them like
Oh,
walk
okay.
into the bean. And so like that's my only experience with it. And I think it looks cool.
To me, it's just is it art? No, it's just an oddity.
Yeah, but it's cool. It's fun.
I'm just,
Yeah.
You can
I
say-
think in the construction,
It's very metallic and reflective too.
I think in the construction of it, I think there's an art to being a good molder or craftsman. There's an art to craftsmanship, but in terms of it as a representation of art, again, open for interpretation. But to me, no.
no.
It's just like there's a museum that has I can't remember what it was, so you know I'm unqualified, but there is a museum, and next to on either side of the door are these two large rock plinths, and above the door entrance is just a rock, but it's a rock that costs millions and millions and millions of dollars to look like a rock. And and they carved it to look like a rock. It's not just a rock they found, they placed it there. Somebody actually carved it a rock to look like another rock. And that's I don't know.
Okay.
I just
All right, so I had to look this back up because I was sounding like an idiot. So it was designed by Anish Kapoor. And another factoid I remember about this Anish Kapoor guy is that he trademarked the Vanta Black, you know, the stuff that's like the blackest black that ever.
That guy?
Yeah.
I fucking hate that guy.
Exactly.
He's such a douche.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know anything about this drama. I'm just hearing it. And another artist whose name I can't remember retaliated by making something that's very close to Vanta Black, but not quite and better in other ways. And the only way you can buy it is to prove that you are not Anish Kapoor, because that's how much these guys hate each other.
That is true. So the reason why is because he was charging an abhorrent amount of money for the black that he was doing, and it was weird. And it's weird for me to say that, but like it's obscene. I think it was like at the time $400 for like the world's blackest black. And then like the guy and then the guys that came in with the other one was like, hey, yo, this black is not only better, does more coverage, it is also only $30 at most.
Nice.
Wow.
So Lee, do you know anything about that or have any opinions on it?
Oh, I just think the whole thing is nonsense.
It is.
That's probably the best.
It's just a bunch of BS.
Just don't even get involved in the drama. You are a wise man.
Don't even. You know, I just it's a big ego pissing contest between.
It is.
Harriman got me. He said Stuart Simple is the other artist. Okay, so yeah, we got beef in the art fandom here. Now then, if there's nothing else, let's get into audience participation, shall we?
Let's go.
Please.
Oh,
Yeah.
we've got so.
I have a limited amount of time, so.
Okay, yeah,
All right,
we'll be
let's
quick.
make this quick.
Battleship Badging Corps says $120,000 banana.
Oh God, that thing.
That's a lot of bananas.
Well, no, it's just a banana, and the banana was sold as an art piece for $120,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds like the guy just wants
Wow.
attention.
Banana for
Yeah.
scale, please.
Again, it's the name and the money. That's all you need.
Now, if it was done for charity, now that would be cool. But
Oh,
but
You
no.
see, Dusty Cat sold a banana at a charity auction one time for I think like $75, and I would sooner call that art.
did you guys?
I can't remember which Brony convention I was at, but there was Peter New, myself, and Andrew Francis, and we actually, when we were having some drinks at the bar afterwards, after one of the ceremonies, and we actually raised $60, I think it was, for a small bag of just potato chips. Just, but it was going for charity, so I was like, "Hey, come on, everybody, kick in."
Yeah, that's
But
fine.
if it's going for a charity, then hey,
Yeah.
put the boots, man, have fun,
Yeah.
raise as much money as you can, as long as it's going to a good cause. But if it's just going to line your coffers, and inflate your ego, then come on.
Yeah, it's kind of messed
You know,
up.
Right.
try and
Yeah.
talk around a
Do you
rolling
guys
door.
remember that one artist? I forget what the artist's name is, but there was but there was a huge uproar because it went on for auction, and as soon as the bid was won, it was shredded.
Oh, that's Banksy.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Banksy, he half shredded his. Yeah, that's Banksy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like his work, but again, it's that's one of the very few modern artists that I like because he's so controversial and because because he actually has a skill. That's what I like. So
Yeah.
he actually does have some artistic skill behind him. And
Right.
and at the end of the auction, it slowly fed into the paper shredder, and it was like, "Oh my god!"
And that was like what? That was like 4 million.
Something like that. Yeah. But I do like me and my Banksy. He's pretty good. Yeah, he's one of the very few that a modern artist because he actually has some skill.
Right.
Well, it was
Harriman-
it was
go ahead.
modern art. It was modern art. So all Banksy had to say was, no. It wasn't finished yet. Now that it's shredded, it's finished, and now it's worth $8 million.
Okay, Brony, next question.
Yeah, Harriman says, hot take. The modern high art, quote, academic art scene has become a mess of standardless, quote, expression. The actual art for business world can still create beautiful, funny, fun, touching, etc. commissions. Any
This
thoughts
is
on
true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Yeah.
But I still think that from a commission level, that's kind of a big part of supporting small business and whatnot. If you're looking for something industry, it's a very different field.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, Vulpicula Enfield. I will pronounce that correctly one of these days. What are your thoughts on the actions of Just Stop Oil?
Oh, that thing.
Lee,
Those are the people that are throwing soup at artists or that art pieces and then gluing themselves onto the wall.
Well, it's different if you're trying to save a giant old growth tree and you chain yourself to that because you're trying to save a life. This is just getting your name out there. It's just
Plus not to mention there's a layer of plexiglass over the painting. You're not going to destroy it.
Yeah, the Mona Lisa was just fine. Thanks for playing.
Right.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Exactly.
HRB says art in general seems like it's being poisoned by minimalism. We've talked about this a bit. Well, no, actually, I don't think we have talked about this. Logos, buildings, even a lot of cartoons look like blobbed or googly-eyed Betty Spaghetti dolls. I'm tempted to use the phrase Cal art style, but I don't. So, what do we think about that?
I have
min-
for sure
the
gone
cor-
on a minimalism music rant on this show. I for sure have.
Yeah, you did. But what about like, and we've definitely seen it trending in the last, I'd say, 10 years. All the logos of everything is just becoming more minimalistic, and we're seeing that in like he was saying, architecture as well. So, what do you guys think about that?
Well, again, it's like, if you draw a square in the center of a square canvas and it's a different color than the canvas color, is that art? I mean, it's just, logos can be simplistic, but is it memorable? Because you have to understand that logos are specifically for branding purposes. They are there to make money by just because of their very existence. That's what they're supposed to do, to become memorable, to implant itself as a logo, as a brand into your psyche, into your subconscious. And so it doesn't really exist in the field of art to me. It just exists as a logo, as a brand, just like certain, what you said, cal art styles of animation. Well, then that to me is completely different. That is art, because it's not just the drawing that brings the character to life. It's the voice acting, it's the directing, it's the animators, it's the storyboard artists, it's the voice director, it's everybody does a dance together, and that dance, that they work together in tandem and in sync, and the product at the end of it is the thing that is brought to life. So it and of itself as a picture, without voice, without direction, without anything, is it art? It's up to the interpretation of the beholder. But when we're talking about animation, it is a dance between a whole bunch of departments that make a creation.
Crimson, do you have any thoughts on minimalism in like marketing and logos and things like that we've been seeing?
So in marketing, my teacher loved this phrase. It's called KISS. And it's called keep it simple, stupid.
Yep, I know that one.
Right. Everybody knows it. It's very easy to go to. Apparently it's not HR approved, but who cares? As far as everything is concerned, sometimes the simplest things can make the biggest impression. Right. Whether it's a logo or whether it's an identifiable character, sometimes the simplest things are able to be the best identifier. There's a few really good character design YouTube channels. I can't think of them right now. I'll probably link them to Brony to show afterwards, but the most identifiable things that you can do for a character design is the shapes and the colors, and keeping it simple and keeping it structured with those shapes and colors in mind can really help your design. And in marketing, sometimes the best icons are actually the simplest, from Nike. Anything as simple as Nike, something as complicated as the Starbucks logo, as long as it's identifiable with your brand, it fits.
Okay. Paladin Pony T says Crimson Glow's OC is very pretty. I like how out of the box she looks.
Well, that's a new statement, considering how much everybody hated my old design.
I actually don't remember your old design.
Wow, you were the first. My old design was just straight red and black, like that was FF0000 and like 00000.
Yeah, that would do it. Yeah. You know something though, there was one character in the Brony fandom for a little while. His name was Brick Brony, and his original OC literally hurt my eyes to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And
there was a lot like that.
Yeah, but like it was, I had never experienced that before. It was physically painful. The high contrast blue, it was like the bluest blue and the reddest red and the yellowest yellow. And I'd never experienced getting physical pain from looking at something before. And he goes, so what do you think of my design? And I put it as lightly, as gently as I possibly could. And I said, it could use a lot of improvement. it could use a lot of improvement. It's actually kind of difficult to look at. He broke down in tears. Like I said it just like that, and that was too much for his poor fragile little ego, and I don't think he produces anymore. Anyway, Creative Burst says, for abstract / non-objective art, it is not easier than realism in my opinion, because to make really good, you have to really know the concept of art. Pollock was the master of the line. Lee, what?
Agreed. Like, good abstract art is art. There is very good abstract art out there.
So I can see the vein bursting in Lee's neck here, because someone gave Pollock a compliment, and I want to hear his thoughts.
Oh no!
I didn't agree with the Pollock part. I was agreeing with the first 80%.
Okay. You're wrong. Anyway,
I'm leaving.
Jackson Pollock is a POS as far as I'm concerned. Now, there is something to be said for people that understand composition. There is something to be said for people that understand color dynamic and the color wheel. And there's something to be said for actually knowing what the F they're doing. He was just a splatter gun, like, shock artist that was just rebelling against a movement at the time. It was an anti-movement, and people, I can't remember, Justin, what was it that you asked me on your last podcast? You said, what would you say to somebody who had bought a Jackson Pollock? And I said, I hope they spend all their money and they die alone.
Oh God.
Yeah,
you don't get my art, Dad.
And here's something else too. When Lee was telling me about his feelings about modern art, I sent him this video of this paint instructor, and he asked his students to look at this Jackson Pollock painting and tell me what makes it so good. And that they all gave really eloquent answers, and then he goes, "It's my painting smock."
Yeah, he pulled out to show that it was just his painter schmuck, and I loved that. I loved that. Oh.
Like I said, guys, stop bullshitting yourself, please.
Oh God,
that video gave me an artgasm.
See, that's the kind of thing I was talking about with my question earlier about the and I put it like smelling each other's farts in the art community.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Crimson, what are you trying to say?
I remember I was in my watercolor class because I was trying to learn watercolor, and I decided to just do abstract art based on whatever music I was listening to. And I think one of them that came on my playlist was, of course, being my edgy self, is Bring Me Back to Life by Evanescence.
Bring me to life.
Bring Me to Life, thank you. And it turned out looking similarly to like I compared it to the Venom intro for Spider-Man 3, but my art teacher decided to suck Jackson Pollock's dick the whole time and just say, wow, this looks like a genuine Jackson Pollock. And I'm like, that looks nothing like it.
Oh God.
Well, I went looking on Google for Jackson Pollock paintings, and I gotta say, a lot of them look like that spin art thing you had when you were a kid, where you put on an easel and it spins, and then you spray the paint on it. Like most of them look like that. But I gotta say, I found one before the drip, which is a mural he has in New York. It's at the Guggenheim. This one actually, I like this one. This actually looks like something. It looks like a lot of like lost souls or anguished people in warfare. Like that's what I'm getting out of this. Like I wanted to see if he made anything that like connected with me that I looked at and would think that looks like art to me. And I did find one. So he's got at least one good piece.
You mean the one that you stole from Picasso?
Really? Before the drip is just a Picasso ripoff? You know what? That would make sense.
the mural that you're talking about that looks like a bunch of people from war. It is remarkably similar to his to Picasso's piece on oh god, I think it was about the Spanish War. I think is what I forget what the piece is called. Yeah,
but the one that's about the Spanish-American War. Yeah, I know the one. Or not Spanish-American, just the Spain Civil War right before World War II.
Yeah.
With Francisco.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, so he just copied that. That's sad.
So,
well, no wonder this one looked good.
Rusty Helm 93 says, "Is being objective in some cases a lost cause because we all have our own perspective and bias?"
Ooh, that's interesting.
I mean, the problem, the existence of subjectivity does not mean, it doesn't make it meaningless to have debate and analyze art. Because like we've been talking about subjectivity all night, and it's true, art is very subject and people can have different opinions about stuff and different valid opinions because it all comes down to taste and what you like ultimately. However, if you're a numbers guy, if you like numbers, one thing we do have is the collective public reaction to something. So you can quantify collective public reaction, and so if something is good, it tends to get an overall good reaction, and that's where the value is in analyzing subjective stuff. Is not just who has a large number of people of like it, but is there an audience that likes it, and how passionately do they like it is sort of the way that you measure the value of something that's subjective.
Real quick here, Rusty Helm 93 says, it quotes you and says, "It actually looks like something. Stellar review, simply mind-blowing." Let's see here. Paladin Pony T says, what inspired you what inspired you to pursue the type of art that you're passionate about, Lee?
Well, it's easy enough to say we are the culmination of all that have come before us, but I think that my initial art that I first liked was Maurice Sendak, probably, and Edward Gorey, who had line drawings and cross hatching and stippled art and pointillism and stuff like that, and then that grew into I mean, I've loved all the genres, but right now the thrust of my main love of art is all about surrealism. My favorite artists are surrealism that walk the fine line between dreamscape and reality, as long as there's a technical aspect to it. But yeah, no, Maurice Sendak because it was whimsical, and Dr. Seuss because it was, reminiscent of cartoons, which I grew up loving since I was 4. And so that's the lineage, I guess, that has led me to where I am now. But definitely, yeah, I'd say Maurice Sendak, Dr. Seuss, Maurice Sendak, Edward Gorey, and then later on, the Impressionists. I really liked the Impressionists because I can't see very well, and so my eyes being disfocused from reality, I don't know what you guys can see when you look at the world, but I think that what you would see is kind of a walk through an Impressionist painting. And so I love Impressionism, but technically, and in terms of storytelling, a picture telling a story, I really, really, really love surrealism. And that's not just from Dali. That's all the way up. There's Gonzalez. There's there's just too many to mention.
I'd like to answer the question a little bit as well, for what inspired me to pursue this art, spite. Because in 2012, season 3 aired, and I thought King Sombra was the coolest freaking villain that I'd ever seen, and I thought there was a lot of I still think there's a lot of really cool theming behind him, and nobody understood that in the Brony fandom, or nobody was seeing what I was seeing. And then I saw a meme of Patrick Star from SpongeBob going, he's just standing there menacingly, and King Sombra was off in the distance under the streetlight, and I said, that's it, I'm starting a YouTube channel. And so that, what's up?
Well, we're going to talk about what got us into, our various mediums. I was going to talk a little bit about what got me with music, but if you got more of the story, please.
No, that's it. But I will say this: let's start being concise as possible.
For me, when I was a kid, for some odd reason, like maybe around the late '90s, music just caught my ear. I can remember this moment very vividly. I saw a commercial, yeah, not a music video, just a commercial for Rob Zombie's Hellbilly Deluxe album. And I remember just hearing that music going off and the narrator talking. I'm like, what's that? I just kind of saw myself getting closer. Then the ad was over. Like, I don't know what that was, but I liked it. And then the same thing happened when I saw a commercial for Godsmack's self-titled debut album. And then it went to a band that Lee and I know very well, Rammstein.
Rammstein.
I remember watching MTV late night and caught the music video for Du Hast. Like, what are they saying? Why are they wearing masks?
I was told a long time ago, and I still don't have this confirmed because I don't speak German, is that the lyrics were actually originally a muffin recipe. And I know it's probably not the truth, but it's a story I love so much.
Well, we know some Germans. I can ask.
Du Hast. You must mix 2 cups. You must mix 2 cups.
Nice, very nice.
Oh my god.
And then I remember hearing Korn's "Got the Life," and that's when the spark ignited for me.
Right.
And how it started me down my musical path.
So,
right.
Crimson, how about you? Do you have a short one you can tell us?
Oh, the shortest one is how I got into voice acting.
Mm-hmm.
There we go, that's short.
Yes, it's very short. See, what had happened was someone asked, and I said yes.
All right.
That's the shortest one. As far as art is concerned, influences that are definitely mostly cartoon and animation, specifically Hanna-Barbera, even more specifically Scooby-Doo. And then later on, it was Scooby-Doo, it was anime, and if you have to be more specific, I'll say, for the sake of argument, Digimon. And then as far as and always Disney. Disney.
All right. So let's see if we can start wrapping this up here. ChucklyFun says the technical aspect may be difficult to criticize because of the Dunning-Kruger and Lee Tockar's idea of not being a quote modern artist may apply to that. Lee, do you have any thoughts about that statement?
I'm going to turn it back to the panel because you would already know my opinions on this stuff.
Paladin. Okay, in that case, Paladin.
If you want to rephrase it in terms of a pointed question at me, then I would say I'll turn it over to you, the moderator, to ask it in a pointed way to me, and I will answer.
Well, I'm just quoting what our friend said here, so I'm not sure, but I'll move on. Paladin Pony T says, question for Lee and Crimson: how do you feel about art for video games?
It's commercial, but it's beautiful. Depending.
Beautiful? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
There's a lot of great video game art out there.
Yeah,
Especially Castlevania art. Oh my god! And when you get to know the fact that artist was actually self-taught, so she knew none of how to actually use the material and just uses it however she wants. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, when I heard that there was this big debate of whether or not if video games are art, my thought was, duh.
No
Why
shit.
are we having this discussion?
Yeah.
So, last one, Cosma and Spira, put this one generally to the group, but I just kind of want to hear what Lee has to say. What are some examples of good art from MLP to you? So, do you have any favorite artists in the Brony fandom, Lee?
Well, I'm very subjective with that too, because I know the people. Like one of the artists that I use all the time is Sarah Neal, but I really love Choco Pony. His stuff is great. I think he's just, but he's a great person behind the art. Um, so there's just too many to mention. So all I will say is, if you've met me before in Artist Alley and you've talked to me and I've talked to you for more than 20 seconds, it means that I think that your art is valid. Otherwise, I would have used myself from a conversation with you just because I didn't want to hurt your
So
feelings.
I need to challenge Lee's objectivity here. What I'm
Oh,
gonna do
no.
is I'm gonna let him. Lee and I are well. I was about to say we're gonna be friends, but I'm gonna put it this way because it's gonna defeat the purpose. I'm gonna make sure Lee gets to know me, so that he understands how horrible of a freaking person I am, and then I'm gonna make the best,
God.
and then I'm gonna make the best art he's ever seen, and give him the worst conflicting emotions he's ever had.
Okay, all right.
That's what.
That's a challenge.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, now all I got to do is get good at art.
Good luck.
God.
Well, modern art is anything. It's apparently that's easy.
Yeah. So,
Exactly. All you have to do is, but listen, I'll represent anything and I'll get behind anything as long as there's a charitable donation for a cause or something. I'll
Yes,
I
the Brony
could sell
offshore
anything.
bank account.
all right. So anyway, let's wrap this up here. Lee, give us a couple of sentences as quick as you can, some closing statements, and one thing you learned.
I learned that what I'm getting from this, what I'm gleaning from this, my takeaway is that we weren't really talking about modern art. We're talking about the very subjective opinion of anybody who has experienced it or experiences it as the viewer. And there's a difference and a distinction between a viewer and a critic. So if you're a critic and you're qualified, that's one thing. If you're just a patron, like somebody who's, well, not a patron, but somebody who just walks through a gallery, everybody's entitled to their opinion. My opinion is that unless you have a technical capability and unless you have integrity, you're not an artist. You have to have integrity, one of the other, because integrity doesn't have to mean that you're, really good at what you do. It just means that you're trying really hard and you love it, because expression is passion, is life. So that's what I think.
So I'm going to get, for the sake of time here, I'm going to get Crimson's closing thoughts and one thing she learned, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Sure.
The closing thoughts for me is that art is and almost will always be subjective. Yes, a critic will likely be able to tell you what's wrong with it or how it's wrong, but the problem isn't necessarily the techniques themselves, the art itself. It's more of the industry that the modern the postmodern art system has created. One thing I have learned is that not only is there differing ideas as to what a critic and a artist can be, but also the different areas in which that critique is considered valid in.
Okay. All right, so that's thank you for that. Lee, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was great. Very, very, very nice, heated discussion. I like it.
long discussion.
Listen, I learned a lot. Okay, I can't even really. I couldn't even. This whole thing has been a learning experience for me. My headphones are tighter on my head. I feel like I've got gray matter leaking out of my ears. I've got a lot to process here. So thank you everyone for coming on. Thank you everyone who tuned in to listen. I hope you enjoyed it. If it's your first time listening, I hope I've earned your continued viewership. I'm very grateful to my patrons. Every little bit helps. especially on the $10 and up tier. These are Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministry, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, who's with us, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden, MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Keno Acrylic VA, Zoroark 720, Mr. Sonic 31, Ridge the Hedgehog, Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. Check out all their links in the description, as well as our guest links. If you would like to get on the show, I'd love to have you. $1 a month on Patreon, and you get to hang out with all of us in the Discord server and pick the topics that we talk about and the games we play. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. God bless. Say good night, everyone.
Good night, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Adios.